All right, everybody. Welcome back. I've got another great interview for you guys. I'm speaking with Paril, who is Nightdive Studios' KEX Engine programmer, and he specifically worked on Quake 2 Remastered. Paril, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
Let's just jump right in here. How long have you been working in the industry prior to Nightdive? Can you give me a little bit of background on your experience?
Yeah, so in the industry, I haven't really been a professional programmer until Nightdive hired me. Before that, it was entirely just hobby stuff, mods for games, things like that. My start was with doing Quake 2 mods back in the early 2000s, I think like 2006 maybe. I do website stuff as well. Planet Minecraft is a website that I work on. So that's the other kind of professional thing that I've been doing. But for industry, this is my first gig.
Awesome. Do you have a specific Quake 2 mod that people would know about that's yours specifically, or have you just hopped around to a bunch of different projects?
I think the big one I'd be known for was called Strog DM. Basically, you just get to pick different Strogs from a list and play as them in deathmatch.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to check it out. So, are you completely self taught when it comes to programming, or did you go to school for this? Is this something that you just learned through modding?
Yeah, entirely self-taught. It was all Quake 2's fault, basically. I really wanted to make mods for it. I wasn't really good at programming when I first started out, but I just kept at it. Here I am today now.
Awesome, man. Well, that's cool how these games can do that for people. I've heard of a lot of stories where they just start tinkering, whether it's mapping or modding, and the next thing you know, they make a career out of it. Growing up playing classic shooter games, is Quake 2, excuse me, is that the game that you primarily focused on? What was kind of your background growing up playing classic shooter games?
Quake 2 wasn't originally supposed to be my game. It was my brother bought it at, I want to say it was Toys R Us. I don't exactly remember how I got into it, but I'm the one who kind of ended up playing it more and, getting really into it. It's definitely my biggest memory of gaming is Quake 2, just throughout all the years. Been a gamer in other areas too, like Age of Empires 2 is one of my favorites to just play still to this day.
So did you play Quake 1 at all, or did you mostly just go straight for Quake 2?
I played Quake 1 later. It was probably on one of these like burned game collection discs that one of my family members had. But I also played Duke Nukem quite a bit. Like there's a whole bunch of them in the mix there.
So would you say that Quake 2 is your favorite, or do you have something else to throw into the mix as your favorite game of all time? If you had to pick one, what's your favorite?
Just for purely nostalgia, it's got to be Quake 2. I think Final Fantasy 7 would be a close second. Because Quake 2, a lot of the stuff that I did with that ended up being online. It's hard to compete with that, with the people you met along the way and the life changes it's made for you.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Sometimes it's about the community around it, too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, for me it was Quake 1, and then when Quake 2 came out, it was like too soon. So I didn't want to leave Quake 1. So I never ever left, and I played that all the way until Quake 3 came out, and then I kind of played the two in tandem. So I completely skipped Quake 2. So it's really fun for me, as somebody who really appreciates these games, to see the remaster coming out and being able to, like you said, nostalgia, like relive. I guess for me it's like reliving a childhood experience that I never really got back then because I skipped it. So now I'm reliving it, and I'm sure there's so many people that feel the same way, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you, because being able to have these remastered games is pretty special experience. So going into, you're saying this is your first professional job in the industry working for Nightdive. Can you give me a little bit of background on how that project kind of came together?
Well, I don't know too much about the early stages of the project. I was actually contacted by Mike Rubitz of id Software because of the Quake mapping Discord. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but
Yep.
yeah, so I'm in there, and ever since he's been in there, since he joined after the Quake 1 re-release came out, I always kind of snidely bugged him like, hey, if you guys are ever doing Quake 2, just because of how much I've worked with that game in general and how much I know about it, I always bugged them that if they're doing Quake 2, they better hire me for it. And I guess
Awesome.
that joke kind of turned into a reality. Or he was looking for a game DLL that had the base game and the expansions like merged together. And I didn't really have a good option for him because I had done that before, but it was like a project from like 10 years ago or so. I offered like, hey, it would only take me like a weekend or so to put a new one together. So I did that, and I worked with Kevin Cloud to sign the whatever legal stuff we needed. And that's basically when I got thrown into the mix with Nightdive, because like in their Discord, just to work on it. And they hired me after Quake 2 was done.
That's awesome, man. That's what's so cool about, this more modern age, I would say, of technology with things like Discord and stuff, is you can actually like message the people that work on these games. And that's how we were able to get this interview, which I was incredibly grateful for. It's like, you couldn't do this, 10 years ago, So it's pretty cool that you were able to make that happen. So good on you, man. Okay, you're going to have to explain this to me and probably some of the listeners. Explain it like we're 5, okay? So we all know that the Quake games run off of id Tech, Carmack's engines. Mm-hmm. But then KEX Engine is somewhere in the mix, and then there's PlayFab servers, and it's just kind of, there's like, to me, and I don't take offense to this, it kind of feels like a couple Band-Aids like slapped together to get the whole thing to work properly. So if you don't mind, just as best as you can to kind of explain what the purpose of KEX Engine is and how it kind of holds this whole remaster together, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, so the KEX Engine is the front end that basically powers the all of the stuff that interfaces with the operating system. So input, display, sound, all of that stuff is handled by KEX. It has all of the APIs required to do all of this on all of the different platforms, so all the consoles and all that. And the game runs underneath it. In the case of Quake 2, we basically left as much of Quake 2's engine alone as we could. So the Quake 2 server and the Quake 2 client are still down there running, but instead of directly going to OpenGL or whatever, it all routes through KEX to display, and the input stuff is handled by KEX and sent to Quake 2, who then processes it as if it was a Quake 2 client.
Well, that definitely helps paint the picture a little bit better. And then PlayFab, that's the servers that the multiplayer runs off of, and that's run by Microsoft. Is that correct?
Right. So there's different network drivers that can be used. There's a LAN driver, for instance, if you're just playing a LAN game, or I guess it's an Ethernet game where you can just connect by IP. But the PlayFab stuff is the online lobby component that Microsoft hosts.
Got it. And now for you, did you know the KEX Engine stuff prior to working for Nightdive, or is that something that once you joined Nightdive, you just all of a sudden were like, all right, I'm gonna learn this, become the master?
Yeah, I had to learn it entirely for this project. I knew about the KEX Engine, but I had not actually worked with it at all. I know some of the earlier versions of it are open source. Obviously, the newer ones aren't.
Okay. Diving into Nightdive a little bit, this is something that I've always been curious about, and maybe because you're a new member of the team, you might not quite know the answer to this yet. Oh, by the way, are you a remote worker, or do you work on site with them?
Yeah, we're pretty much all remote.
Okay.
I'm remote in Ontario.
Well, I don't know. Do you have a little insight on the culture of the group? Obviously the niche for Nightdive has become older first-person shooters, boomer shooters, whatever you want to call that genre. Remastering some of the all-time classics. I mean, obviously the Quakes, and Turok is one of my personal favorites that you guys have done. Is that more of a business niche that Nightdive has kind of fallen into that just kind of works, or do you get a sense of true passion for old shooters in this group, and you guys are just really excited to just keep bringing these to the market?
From what I've seen so far, it does seem like it's entirely passion. There's always looking at different games and IPs that have kind of been lost, have been requested heavily to get remasters, and we're always reaching out to companies to try to find, to try to bring these games back. And I never get the sense that they just want to make something completely new or be done with remastering entirely.
Thanks for that little bit of insight. That's something I've always been curious about. Not to talk too much about myself, but my own personal experience in the industry is a little bit different. It would seem like some studios who had their own IPs, obviously that was their passion project, but then there were other studios that maybe they were working on somebody else's project. They're just kind of doing it for the paycheck. So, well, going back to Quake 2 and, learning KEX Engine and all the kind of stuff that you had to do for the remaster, was there a particular really difficult challenge that you ran into that you were personally able to overcome that was just a huge fuck yeah moment?
I would say that would have to be the player physics. Anybody who's ever dealt with Quake 2 or even Quake 3 to an extension kind of understands how interesting the collision engine is with Quake 2, or even Quake 3, because it's basically the same one. Getting the player physics to work with full precision and not get snagged on things or feel different than how the vanilla gameplay felt was probably one of my highest accomplishments with the remaster. I know there's a couple little things that I forgot, which luckily the Jump Quake 2 community, and they were very vocal to me about what we got wrong with the movement physics. So I'm glad that they were. So there was some stuff that I got fixed that's going to be in the patch. But getting that all working, feeling like Quake 2, because like anything you change in that physics engine is going to change how the game feels. So getting it to feel correct was a huge goal for me, and I think I nailed it, but I don't know.
Getting it to work right, yeah, that, I mean, I can imagine that is a huge challenge, because we're talking about people's childhoods and nostalgia, and I guess it's a perfect segue into my next question, which is, have you ever had that sense of responsibility, like, we have to get this right or the Quake 2 community is going to kill me and I'll never live it down? Is that something that during the development you were worried about? How did you kind of deal with that pressure?
Yeah, I feel like that's always at the back of your mind, regardless of what game it is. But it's particularly bad with Quake 2 just because of how many people I know in different communities. The pro community, then there's Jump community, and the modding communities. Like anything you change is going to upset somebody, but you kind of have to prioritize what you want the game to be and what the game was supposed to be over worrying about little things like that. So a lot of the changes were done in the interest of gameplay, right? So you can't please everybody, but you want to cast the widest net you can with something really fun and good.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair take. Well, let's talk about a little bit about the future support of Quake 2. I think I told you before we started the interview, I've been more on the Quake Remastered side of the community. I'm a mod in that Quake Remastered Discord, and have been for a little over a year or more now. What's kind of your guys' plan for the future support of Quake 2 in terms of patching and updates? Like Quake got several patches after the remaster. Will Quake 2 get a similar treatment?
Yeah, so we have one patch that is coming out. I don't have an exact timeline on when, but there is a patch, and it is very large. Quite a bit was done in it, and it is coming out. As for beyond that, I don't know. Id as well has been, Mike Rubit specifically has been telling people that because Quake 1 has the official add-ons thing, where there's some really good community content there that's been made to work, and it's just available through download in the launcher. Yep. That's unlikely to happen with Quake 2 because of various factors. So I don't know on like what there is on the horizon there. There's stuff I would really like to have in as additional DLC down the line, but whether it's going to happen or not is kind of up to id Software. I did post a preview. I do have the PlayStation campaign being worked on. It's basically finished. It just needs some polish. I would like to have that as just another option in new game. Just at some point down the road just to close off the content, because like that's the only bit that's missing from this remaster is having the PlayStation version in there too.
Oh,
but
cool.
outside of that, I have no idea what the future is going to be.
All right, well that's cool. That's still awesome for you to share. That would be really neat. I've never even seen the PlayStation. I did play Quake 2 64 when I was younger, but I never had a PlayStation growing up, so that'd be pretty cool for me and probably a lot of fans to be able to experience. So hopefully you can get that done. That'd be great.
The N64 one has more interesting levels, I would say, just because it's more of a new campaign. But I find that the PlayStation version is a little closer to the vanilla gameplay. But like people have mentioned, the levels are basically just simplified versions of the PC ones. I don't know, but I just wanted it in there to kind of close off the last remaining unremastered bit of Quake 2.
Yeah, complete the loop.
Yeah.
You made me think of a question. I went through the id vault, basically item by item, and read everything, and there was really interesting. Is that something that you personally had a hand in putting together, or is that like, did you work with somebody with id Software to get that thing together? Because that was a really cool piece of content. I don't think a lot of people maybe have been talking about that.
Yeah, the Vault is one of the more interesting features I find of Quake 2 Remastered, and it was especially a big deal to me because, yes, Mike Rubitz was the one who basically put that together, but I did a lot of the archaeology and digging to find stuff from all these ancient files that are interesting to put in there.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you my experience. I was going through the id vault and I decided, okay, this is going to make a cool video. So I started recording myself doing it live, and I'm clicking through everything, and I was like, okay, this thing's huge. Now it's going to have to be 5 videos. And so I made it into 5-part series. As I'm clicking through, all of a sudden I click one and it takes me into a map. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I had no idea. That was like a huge surprise. And it was actually really funny because, you know, these load screens are so fast now. I literally click it, and the next thing you know, I have a soldier yelling at me, and I was like, oh god, and I was like, oh, I'm playing. I didn't put my reaction in the video because it was really stupid. I sounded stupid, but I did eventually go back and I played all of that content for the nostalgia, just for the learning. So it's pretty cool. They're actually, some of those are actually really challenging. The maps a lot more challenging than base Quake 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting how the balance was kind of at the window that early on. I think the main reason that is because on those playable demos, the way they were presented at E3 and the ECTS was you spawned with God mode and all weapons. So I don't think they even thought about how it would actually play. And
That's
like
funny.
in some of in one of the early demos I'd found, actually, like it was just a version of base 1. I don't know if they were just taking screenshots or what, but like they had a gladiator like right outside where that little hallway is to the end area, and it's like,
Oh my gosh.
how would you deal with a gladiator in the first level of the game, right?
It was your blaster.
Yeah.
Well, talking about going back to the early days, you know, for you, it's probably was pretty cool going through and digging out all this stuff. But from a code-based perspective, now I know nothing about code, but I'm just really curious about this. When you're looking at the old code that John Carmack coded, for example, is his code like spaghetti noodles, or is it like super organized and clear? I'm just kind of curious about how the mind of that man has kind of worked from a coding standpoint.
So, I find id Tech 2, specifically the Quake 2 engine variant, because like id Tech 2 is technically Quake 1 and Quake 2. But Quake 2's engine is probably one of the easiest to follow engines, like purely just to read and actually work with. I find that once you start getting into Quake 3, things kind of become overcomplicated and over-engineered. But Quake 2 is in this weird area where it's simple enough that you can understand what's going on just by reading it. You don't really have to jump through many different functions and different files to get an idea of what's going on. Compared to something like Ken Silverman, who did the build engine, which is basically it's one file that has the entire engine in it.
Oh wow.
Carmack's code is definitely a little more fun to tinker with and read. It still holds up. Like the majority of his code is still there. Like, we didn't need to do anything to it, really, to get it working or to fit it into KEX or anything.
Oh, wow, that's really cool to know. What's the future like for you? I'm assuming you're going to stick with Quake 2 for as long as possible, and then, you know, you're now a Nightdive employee. Are you going to move on to other projects? You don't have to tell me which, but is that the plan, to hop into some more remastered of some more games?
Yeah, I already have. My first credit is technically in Rise of the Triad, Ludicrous Edition, since that came out before Quake 2.
Oh yeah, I have it installed. I haven't played it yet though.
Quake 2 is obviously where I spent the majority of my development time on. That's like, what, 2 years now, it feels like. But I am also working on, they were announced at Gamescom, Turok 3 and Dark Forces. So yeah, there's other stuff too. Like I'm always working on stuff. I think it works well for the way I work, that there's multiple projects that I can move between. Because I find I get burned out really easily if I'm just stuck with one thing for extended periods of time.
That's good. Good.
Except for Quake 2, it's hard to get burnt out from Quake 2. That's the only exception.
What about it for you? What about Quake 2 makes it so special?
I don't
Can
know.
you pinpoint that?
No, I don't know what it is. It's just, you never get tired of it. I don't know how to explain it. It's been 20-some years. I feel like there's always more I can do with Quake 2, and I don't get lost in the code. I know exactly what to do a specific thing that I need to do. So there's never any questions about how to do something. It's just to find the time to actually do it.
Well, it's probably similar to why all of us keep playing the same game for 20 plus years, right? Like I've never really been a modder or a mapper. I've dabbled, but I've never done anything serious. Yet I've still played Quake and had Quake installed on my computer for as long as Quake has existed. And I play it, pretty consistently. I still play an iteration of it almost every day. Luckily, my office culture, I can play video games at lunch. So I still play, mods and stuff of Quake, and I play some Quake 2 multiplayer and stuff. So it's probably similar just from a programming and modding standpoint, is that you're just doing it because you love it and it's the nostalgia and it's fun and it's what you know, and you just do it.
Yeah, it's just familiarity, and it's your home basically.
Well, if you personally could do a project and you could remaster any game that's out there, and it doesn't have to be a classic shooter game, what would you like to see remastered or have a hand in remastering? And I'm not expecting you to release Nightdive secrets on this. It's just a passion project that you personally would love to see done.
Yeah, so if you'd asked me this a couple of years ago, Quake 2 would be already at the top of the list. That would have been number 1. That's already done though, so I can't use that answer. If I had to pick a number 2, I think it would be Thief, The Dark Project, and Thief 2.
Oh, cool.
Those are 2 other games that I really love. It's hard to put into words. That kind of genre has kind of fallen off, I find, and I think that's what it is. Is Thief and Thief 2 did something with the stealth genre that just I haven't been able to find anywhere else. Yeah. And you kind of run out of, like, you can't play the same campaign over and over again. Like I played pretty much every fan mission there is out there for them, and I don't know, I would love to see what could be done with it if it was given a full remaster treatment. I don't know if I want to see a remake. Well, then again, if it was on the level of System Shock like what Nightdive did as well, that might be pretty convincing. But I would love to see Thief done for sure. That would be one that would, no doubt, I'd be on that project almost as much as Quake 2. On the side of that, if we're not talking like first-person stuff, there's a PlayStation racing game called NASCAR Rumble, and it's one of my favorite in that genre. So that would be another one that I would love to do. And one that's a little closer to, I think Atari owns it now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Robot Arena 2 was an extremely fun online game where you built a robot in the little designer thing, and you had quite a bit of flexibility with what you could do with it. And then you can play online or against bots locally to fight the robots like
That's
Robot
Cool.
Wars. Yeah.
I don't think I ever played that one. That sounds really fun though. Well, you got the Remaster King here, Paril. I'm pretty much at the end of my my questions here for you, but I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I wanted to kind of know a little bit more about this whole process, and now I have a very good visualization of it, so I just want to thank you personally for bringing back some childhood nostalgia for me and a bunch of other gamers. Before we wrap it up, though, I do have kind of this open mic. If there's anything you want to share with the community, plug a personal project.
The only thing would be to look forward to the PlayStation version, the campaign. If it doesn't come out officially, it will be I'll just drop it on probably ModDB. That's the other place that I've posted mods in the past. I don't really have a release date for it. I'm hoping before the end of the year, but that's pretty much it. And of course, I wanted to thank everyone else at Nightdive and id who I worked with on this project, because they were all amazing. I think we nailed it. I think we got it.
I think you did too. I think you guys have all done an amazing job. As I said, a lot of gamers worldwide are thanking you right now, myself included. So awesome, man. Well, again, Paril, thanks again for chatting with me and sharing some of your insight on the process. And I'll just see you around in the Discord. Look forward to maybe even having a chat in the future if a big update comes up. I might have to hit you back for another interview or something.
Yeah, I'll just list out all the patch notes. That'll be fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my developer interview with Paril of Nightdive Studios. I really hope you enjoyed it, as I really enjoyed doing that interview. So thank you, Paril, again for the opportunity to speak with you. Guys, please let me know if you're enjoying this content in the comments below. I have a few more interviews lined up. However, I am starting to run short on people to speak with, and it definitely takes some effort to do these interviews. But if you guys are enjoying them, I'm going to keep them up. So hopefully you'll let me know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thanks again, guys, and as always, I'm SaltyOctopus, and I will see you next time.